Hello humans. It's 17th. It's 8:45 in the morning out here. It's raining. We had a razor clam dig. This, for people that don't know, I live on the coast and there's razor clams out here. They're tasty little critters and they have, they're regulated by the game department out here, and we had this organized, or not organized, but allowed harvest. And so people get up at low tide, which was like, I think it was 4:05 in the morning. Well, they got to get out there. Really, the department, game department, game and wildlife, or fisheries, wildlife and fisheries, they allow this, and they suggest that the low tide's at 4:05. You should get out about 2 hours ahead of the low tide and start digging. So in the middle of the night, and there's no street lights or anything down there. You see all the people with the little headlights out there feeling their way through the low tide hunting for clams. Anyway, but we have rain. This is good. It's coming down. We're starting to get back into winter here. Had to run the heat, all of that business. I mean, winter. We have two seasons out here, sort of slightly more warm and rainy. This year we actually had dry and warm. But then usually the rest of the year is cold and rainy. We're into the cold and rainy part now. Okay, so we're going to talk about evolutionary forces and warfare. Now, evolutionary or evolution applies to everything. So I like these evolutionists, right? I mean, and like Brett Weinstein and Heather Haying, they think well, especially for normies. They think about evolution, they apply it to stuff. My thing is that they live in a little series of boxes, and you can't get them to bust out their thinking to even examine their paradigm. So they won't step outside their own paradigm and examine it to see if it is part of evolution, if their own dynamics are playing well within the paradigm itself, right? So as far as I know, I've never seen any of their stuff that applies their own level of analysis to their own lives. So in that sense, I don't think they're smart. Okay, I think they're intelligent. There's a big difference. There's lots of intelligent people, and they make very stupid decisions about their own lives. So you'll see PhD scientists that smoke themselves to death. This kind of thing, right? And smart is when you apply the level of intelligence you have to your own life. And so you can have a low level of intelligence and be very, very, very smart, because you make very, very, very good decisions by applying those rules and metrics in your life to your own life. And so you're self-examining, right? I forget who it is that said it, but a life unexamined isn't worth living, is the old phrase. Anyway, so we're here today to talk about evolutionary warfare, because we're in war now. Most people, or a lot of the normies, don't recognize it. They don't recognize any of the layers of the warfare. So we've got warfare at the moment between the CCP and the rest of the globe, rest of humanity, right? Let's put it that way. It's not the planet that they're at war with. It's humanity. And we've got the power elite. They're at war with humanity. We've got all of the press outlets, so we'll call them MSM. That includes academia and science in all forms that's regulated. They're at war with humanity. So a lot of people are at war with us, including the bug. Now, I happen to think that the space aliens are directing all of this, but that's neither here nor there at this stage. What's important is that we understand that warfare, like everything else, evolves, that evolution is a process. Now, I can actually show even religious people why evolution has been built into our reality. And it is not as they quite understand it, not as they think, right? And I'm not talking about Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest of the species, right? The alteration of the species over time. That's not what I'm talking about with evolution. So my evolution idea is seen every day, everywhere. And evolution comes from, if you go and look at these videos I've got out there called the Wooble, or on YouTube or BitChute, or if you go look at the video Yet Another Woo Cult, you'll see references to this thing I call the Wooble, and it's my theory of everything, and it has to do with the little bloop theory, which is versus the Big Bang theory, and it has to do with 22 trillion times a second we are destroyed and then recreated. So in this process, there's the same energy. So magnetism, repulsion or attraction is the same energy. It is just behaving differently. So we have, and this is basically the key. Okay, magnetism holds everything together. So there's magnetism and electricity. There's only impulse as a method of movement or force within reality. Rotary motion, all forms of motion come down to impulse. Jet engines, impulse. Rocket engines, impulse. Electricity through wires, impulse. LEDs flashing out light to you, impulse. Your heart, pulse, impulse. So everything is an impulse within reality, in the materium. This impulse derives from this creation destruction mode that we flop into 22 trillion times a second. It must be so fast that our conscious minds will never ever be able to apply any machinery or anything to get at it. That's like the hashing algorithm for reality. It prevents us from fucking with the materium. Okay, we can get close, but we'll never get to that point. And so it's inbuilt, and it's self-correcting. So in this creation destruction, I find, no one else has to accept it, but this is what I'm stating. And I'm going to draw it upside down over the way I usually do it for purposes of illustration. So this is let me do that in black, just because time is better represented in black and motion is better represented in red. So here we have time. That's 1/22 trillionth of a second. We're going to need another one. Hang on. This is the gap that has no time between those two 1/22 trillionths of a second. This here is the shape that the magnetism follows when it creates reality. So it peaks instantly, recreating throwing all the atoms, what we think of as atoms, back together, connecting it all to consciousness, blah, 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 just sinking right in. So it peaks like that. This is the creation magnetism, creation form of that energy. We call it magnetism here in our grosser reality. The destruction form is like this. It's a little bit right there. Okay, so the destruction portion here is sharper, faster, shorter duration, and all of those metrics, the intensity, the duration, and the height of the expression here represent all these golden mean ratios. Okay, you can go look them up. All the golden mean ratios, or the golden triangle is in there, all of these things. And I discuss it in some of these other videos. This is important because we see that inherent in the creation and recreation of ourselves and all of reality, 22 trillion times a second, there is asymmetry. There is asymmetry in all of these different facets of that creation. That asymmetry at the level of recreating reality is what sets up evolution. Without asymmetry, there can be no evolution because there can be no growth. This right here is what sets up the spirals that we see in all of the shells and all of these other aspects of reality. All of this is explainable in this understanding of magnetism and the recreation of reality. This works it all the way up. Okay, so as above, so below. But in this case, it's as in the micro minutia, therefore in the macro. It goes on through. So we find that reality is not symmetric, right? In everybody's face, there are areas of symmetry, but they are close, but not exact. In everybody's body, the same thing. As we progress through time, we age asymmetrically. As we progress through life, we accumulate things asymmetrically within ourselves, between ourselves and our siblings, between ourselves and parents or anyone else, right? There is nothing that is equal. There is no equity that exists in this materium. This is one of the reasons that I know that our bug down here is pimping the idea of the CRT and all of that business, all of the equity stuff, right? There is equality because everything is equal. Everything has an equal opportunity to express itself, but there is no guaranteed outcome of anything, and this is defined in the nature of reality being asymmetric. So, asymmetry sets up things, right? It sets up the idea of potential of energy. As a plant grows, as a tree grows, it grows over time and it gets a stone pushed on it, and it grows and it gets tougher and tougher. So that particular tree gets tougher because that stone is setting on it. That particular tree grows stronger. It has adequate, otherwise it has adequate light and minerals and water. And so it keeps growing and pushing on the little stone, right? And its growth rates and its patterns and its development will be different from the tree that's next to it, that's outside of that influence of that stone, that can grow straight up without hindrance. And so these things are expressed in all aspects of reality, this asymmetry that exists. And so we see even in our language, like the Chinese ideogram for stop or halt is in fact a stone trying to push down on a plant, or a plant trying to grow up through the stone, depending on which way you want to think about it. And so we see it in language, we see all of these kind of things replicated, this asymmetry replicated everywhere. In the potential aspect, that tree growing up through the stone, that tree, that little spark of life there, that is that tree, over time, so the tree takes time and adds in water and growth and stuff, and eventually it gets to the point where it pushes that stone off, just by its growth. And thereafter, it's free, its experience is sharply asymmetrical from that point on, because it doesn't have that weight on it, it's no longer deformed, actively deformed, although it has been deformed in the past, and so its future is unlike other trees that are not deformed and so on. But in this thing, this is the reality of how potential exists in the world, because that little stone that fell off was on the top of a hill and it started rolling down, it hit other stones, and pretty soon you've got yourself a little avalanche or a landslide or whatever, right? So it happens in that sense, unbidden by wind, other external forces. Life itself will create potential probability of outcome and outcome. It'll create the potential for something to happen by growing. It'll cause that to occur by the probability of that stone rolling, and then there will be the outcome, right? The tree had no intention, as far as we know, of causing that particular stone to roll off, and thus, cause the landslide that swept away the village in China, right? That sort of thing. But this is the nature of our reality, that there exists this potential in everything, this asymmetry that continually happens. And because everything is asymmetric, we have the potential for evolution at all of these different levels. The tree evolves harder, its seeds are better suited, the other tree dies in the cold because the other didn't have the stone on it. All these different kinds of things affect our reality. So we see that over the course of time, in the nature of things, the asymmetry is also expressed in humans at all levels, not only in our bodies, but in our thinking. And this asymmetry expresses in all of our output, all of our different things that we do. And so our asymmetry is causing evolution. That evolution has affected everything that humans do, and one of the things we do a lot of is war. We're in war now, although lots of people don't recognize this war. But it is necessary for those of us that do recognize the war to understand what it's all about and how it works and so on, okay? Because it's a war unlike other wars. We don't have nation states throwing bombs at each other or shooting or this kind of thing. What we're going to discuss today is the evolution the evolutionary movements that have altered war and your part in it now. Because we're all in a new kind of a warfare. Now, Alex Jones has called this InfoWars, and he's correct, okay? But he's also limited. This perspective is limited. And what we're going to do today is we're going to extend our understanding of war. We're going to start with just a quick little brief overview of a couple of books here, right? And so let me see when this was written. Here's a book that is written about Captain John Boyd, or he ended up a colonel, but I became aware of him when he was a captain. 2002. Okay, so this is a book, Boyd, and it's about John Boyd, the Air Force pilot. And he changed the way we think about war. And he changed the way that I thought about other aspects of things by a couple of things that he pointed out in his many lectures and so on that I was able to happenstance come across. All right, so this is a fairly decent book. It's a very great read. It's a biography, okay? So a lot of people don't get into reading biographies, but it's a biography with intent. So you'll find a lot of military officers that read this just because of the understanding that it provides to you of your task as a military officer, right? And so that book has been condensed into this book, Fourth Generation Warfare Handbook. It's a little gray. It's hard to get it to show well. Anyway, in this book by Lind and Thiel, Lieutenant Colonel Thiel, U.S. Marine Corps, is about fourth generation warfare. Now, in fourth generation warfare, which is where we're at now, that's actually a level of thinking beyond the idea of InfoWars. So when Alex Jones came up with a concept ages ago of InfoWars, and how it was all information and how it was all deception and so forth, he keyed in on some really excellent points to focus on. But his InfoWar concept only dealt with one of the elements. Now they do not. Okay, so these Marine guys, when they wrote the book, they did not include the woo here. Okay, so let's just be clear. Their little matrix here only has 9 squares because it only includes physical, mental, moral, tactical, operation, and strategic. I threw in the woo because I've got this bigger picture, which is just the way it is. And there's people that have bigger pictures beyond mine, right? It's just the way it is. So Alex Jones, he was right. He was correct that the biggest aspect of war in his lifetime was going to be InfoWars. But we're shifting now, okay? And it's a fittingly not a sharp shift because it's evolutionary. We're shifting into the war where the moral aspect and the woo aspects will be much greater than the physical and mental aspects. Now, physical aspects is weapons on target, right? Tanks in the field shooting each other, that's physical. Mental would be considered the information war that we're in now. All aspects of it, anything that can get at your mind to affect your mind relative to the warfare. The moral aspect is that which gives you strength. It's an internal thing. Okay, so morality here is not being discussed as an abstract. It's not being discussed as a religious concept. It's not being discussed as a social overlay. Any of that. Okay, this is a personal morality thing. So, and it's a deep cultural thing. Okay, so it is cultural morality, but it is cross-cultural or pan-cultural. It's in every culture. And so I can give you an example. So combatants in warfare who would cease fighting in order to accommodate respectfully the burial of someone, of the civilian population in which they are embedded and among which they are fighting. Okay, so that was a moral decision on everybody's part. And it was pan-cultural. All right, so in all of the cultures there that was represented, the native culture, the indigenous culture that was being fought within, and then the combatants within there, they all had the morality of respect for the dead, okay? And so this was an honorable thing, and so that's really what we're talking about, morality and honor at a personal level. And this is a dominating warfare thing. And so in that particular example, the one group of combatants gains a moral advantage because of the way they handled themselves in respect to this particular funerary procession. And so that little bit of stuff ends up affecting a huge level of strategic, physical, and mental warfare, just because you had a tactical moral response in the moment in the field. So this is fourth generation warfare. It's not good enough to just go and shoot your enemies. Doesn't do you any good at all. So in this sense, devolution is fourth generation warfare, okay? Doesn't do you any good to shoot them, doesn't do you any good to arrest them, because then you got to contend with the populace that doesn't know what the fuck's going on. And so you've still got to go through the mental to get the populace to understand what's happening. And then you've got to get the populace to understand that you've got the moral authority to be doing what you're doing and that they should side with you. So this is the hearts and minds aspect of it. So this whole grid thing up here aligns all aspects of warfare. And so before you do anything in fourth generation warfare, like do something stupid and go win stupid prizes, falling into your enemy's trap, you have to examine all of your potential actions in this kind of a grid and see what's going on, right? So yes, you could be tactical and you could go to DC on September 18th, right? And you could go there with the intent of filming and all of this kind of stuff and proving in the info wars that at an operational level that your enemies are duplicitous and so on. But the problem is that their operational level traps you in a moral dilemma, and you've lost strategically because now you're in jail and everything you tried to do doesn't come to anything. So you got to be really fucking careful, right? This is not simple shit. This book is great. It gives you great tips. The first 2 chapters are an overview. The rest of the chapters are basically like light infantry tactics, which you could just take the infantry part of it and use that with information war, right? How to get your friends and neighbors to support you, how to get extra people to support you in your aspect of information war, and so on. Now, here's another aspect of this, right? You're at war now. Okay, in my opinion, you're at war with this evil space alien bug that's directing all of this other shit, but it doesn't matter. Pick any of these right here, you're at war with them, right? CCP, the elites, or the media, the academy, you know, the academic sciences, and so on. Big Pharma, all of these guys, the military-industrial complex, all of those. Well, it's more industrial complex now. Big Pharma, because they've split from the military and they're actively attacking the military globally on the behalf of the bug. And so this is where we're at this point within our evolutionary warfare. We've evolved from just regular old guns on targets kind of thing, or propaganda, all right? And so now, if you're going to have propaganda, and because we have the internet, because we have the social media, because there can be pushback, you've got to have the moral high ground. You've got to be legit. And so the left has had this brittle morality, and they have been under the influence of the bug in pimping all of the this brittle morality with the vax and the shots and so forth, right? And the fake pandemic, although very real deaths. So let me divert for a second. Oh no, I'll come back to that. Hang on a second. Let me just make a note. Okay, so. The brittle morality that the left has exuded, institutionally supported, mainstream media supported, is breaking down all over. And it's flaking. It's flaking off in little chunks. And so as it flakes off, we get the next level of exposure of what was underneath it. It keeps going and going. So the breakdown on the enemy class here is underway at the moment, but the rest of humanity is participating, right? We're starting to get really pissed about all this shit. We're kicking back on all of it. So we have ourselves a warfare situation in which people are getting killed, all of that sort of thing. But in my way of thinking, that we have an advantage, not a strategic advantage, not an operational advantage, not a tactical advantage, although we have all of those because of our sheer numbers and because of the brain power we've got and so on. But we've also got this weird woo advantage. And the woo advantage is that our enemies depend on humanity to fight us, their enemies. But our enemies are doing to their own humanity what they would do to us. That is to say that they are indeed injecting people all around and putting the toxin in them and causing the deaths and all the problems. And they're depleting their own numbers. And at this stage, I'm of the opinion that all of these guys are so bug controlled that they don't see that they're doing themselves damage and not reaching any kind of strategic or operational effectiveness with what they're after. So in my understanding, those people that have taken the vax, that wanted to take it, have taken it, okay? Those people that haven't taken it won't take it. And the bug and his people just don't recognize that. And the more they become frantic and pursuant of the goal of getting everybody vaxxed, it's now starting to blow back on the people that have already been vaxxed because they're getting so much pushback from the rest of us, right? Because we're getting so irritated by everybody coming unglued about this, which should be a personal choice decision. And so we get to the point where the fact that I get shit when I'm shopping for not being vaxxed and not wearing a mask and all this kind of stuff makes me very aggressive. I don't do stupid very well. So as I leave restaurants that are not going to serve me because I'm not wearing a mask and I'm not vaccinated, I shout out that, oh, hey, the vaccines are killing people, blah, blah, blah. Just put these thoughts in there. Yes, I look like a lunatic and so on. But at the same time, I'm also in that process able to point out, oh, so-and-so, you're microclotting. I can see that you've got the vax already. Because these people are not even able to, young people, not even able to walk up 5 and 6 flights of stairs, right? And I don't mean to be evil, but it does put the thought into their mind to going out and get checked. Because I always tell them, you need to get a D-dimer test right away. See if you need to be on blood thinners. There is a certain inherent, although much degraded these days, level of moral authority just being an old guy. And if an old guy who gets bent out of shape but not crazy, I'm not slathering and so on, and I leave, I don't cause too much of a problem, but I cause enough of a problem on all of these instances that it gets their thinking to percolating a little bit, if it is possible. Many of these individuals it's not possible. So it's a terrible situation with dealing with the vaxxed, and I'm getting to the point where I'll probably not be able to do it anymore. I'll just have to shut myself down, get it done, and get out of their presence as rapidly as possible because their minds are not functioning on things. Anyway, so getting back to our evolutionary warfare here. So we have to, the ultimate here would be to be in the empty box, right? The box that is not a box, the box where there is a side lost. And that's the woo-woo, to be maximally woo in this whole process that we're going to be going through for these next couple of years. That's going to be, in my opinion, the safest. The next, for the warfare part, obviously the guys who wrote the book here, they want you to be both moral and strategic, moral and operational, and moral and tactical in order to be successful. And you can do that. So you could have an absolutely bloodless war if you had the moral authority and the ability to convince everybody mentally that you had that authority, and everybody was responding physically to you having that moral authority, then you would win, and no one would shoot anymore, right? It's like this Portuguese judge. I'm sure you've seen the clip of him berating these cops and telling them, "You will not strike people for not wearing a mask. You know, I'll have your ass arrested." Blah blah blah. Right? And so this is part of the fourth generation warfare. Is approaching things with this moral authority, with moral high ground. Now, the left claims authority, but they have no moral authority at all. They don't have morals. They don't stand for a moral position at all. Therefore, it's awful hard for them to claim to be a moral authority, right? And it gets to be looking ridiculous in terms of how they approach certain things. You know, where they are basically negating their own position by the way in which they attack you. You know, I won't get lost in the weeds down in there, but here's where we're at now. In our situation now, doctors. Okay, so we're in world war, humanity war. It's world war in a way that's never been waged before. It's encompassing all of humanity, and it's upended everything, and we're deep into the woo. So in this case, we've got doctors that are now the concentration camp gas chamber operators, because the doctors are killing people because they're stupid and mind controlled, and they're insisting on remdesivir, and they're still intubating people, still shoving ventilators down their throat when they're in a coma and then letting them die. Plus, they're giving them all of these drugs that relax them, and if you become combative in a hospital at all, which means saying no to any of their shit inappropriately, they'll just drug you and do it to you anyway. So hospitals are death chambers at this point. We have too many people telling us this in too many instances of nurses and even doctors that are coming out saying this shit is just fucking wrong and we don't know what's going on here, right? So the thing to do is to avoid the hospital. If you have to go in, the thing to do is to have it really explicit. You won't have the protocol. You know, tell them to just let you fucking die rather than shove remdesivir or a ventilator in you. Just the remdesivir destroys your kidneys and you drown in your own fluids. And it's going to but they make fucking lot of money on it, right? The government's paying, all of this shit is incentivized. You get the behavior that is incentivized. The federal government has incentivized it. The federal government here, the Bidenistas are paying farmers, or paying water carriers, water rights holders in Northern California to dump the water into the ocean rather than provide it to the farmers. They want to starve you out. That's another thing going on. Okay, so in our warfare here, we've already seen that, okay, so it is emerging now to those who know where to look and how to look, that Big Pharma is dead and is dying. It's going to keel over and collapse as we go through these next couple of years. And well, we're going to have to reconstruct a health system around being healthy, not sick care, right? And so that whole thing is dying off. The changes, the evolutionary changes within the asymmetric changes within our situation now, within our social order now, are just fantastic. Because we're going to see the death of Big Pharma. We're seeing the death of big petroleum at this point. Energy is still the largest commodity on the planet, but the old organizational structure is dying. Both of those used to support big state, okay? And so in 1699 at the Treaty of Westphalia in Germany, a bunch of Saxons, Anglos, Teuts, Germans, Celts, and Gauls got together and signed a treaty that basically made it illegal to do warfare unless you were a state, unless you were a king, or they didn't really conceive of it that way, but a republic, okay? And so unless you were a king, it was illegal for you to be out doing warfare, and the idea was that all kings would be against you if you fought against one king. It was sort of a self-protection pact, okay, this Treaty of Westphalia. We've had big state having a monopoly on warfare ever since, until currently. So now that we don't have to actually be kinetic, and we don't actually have to engage in the tactical in order to win operational or strategic goals within warfare, then you have an irregular army. An irregular army in the sense of those people that are self-selecting, willing participants, right? Combatants, if you will, even though they're not combative or violent in the sense of, expressing violence in the form of a weapon. They're using propaganda and moral high ground and lecturing and that sort of thing, right? But this is the nature of fourth generation warfare, is that we're all in it, we're all combatants at some point, or self-identifying non-combatants, right? And that becomes really risky. If you're not a combatant these days, in my opinion, you'll just suck up the mind control, take the vax, and you'll die. And so you'll be a victim of war, a casualty of war. And this war is going to have a great many casualties, I'm afraid. A great many. We may be looking at hundreds of millions very shortly. It appears to be escalating quite rapidly. So now I can count 4 people that I've spoken with in 2020 that are not here anymore in 2021 because they took the vax. And then I can count 4 other people that took the vax and have dropped off the face of the earth. And nobody knows where they are, what they're doing, what's happened to them, etc. These are like individuals that I would come in contact with in my weekly routine sort of thing, and they took the vax. This one woman was ailing over the first 2 weeks. She just didn't feel good. Now she hasn't come back to work. No one knows where she is. It's been months. So we don't even know if she's still alive. And so that's just in my little tiny circle, and I don't see that many people. I'm a paranoid living way the fuck out on the coast. So look out for missing people in your environment, right? Anyway, so the death rate's going to escalate. It's going to be really horrific. It's an aspect of war that won't go away now, may in the future. But at this point, we're going to have to deal with the changes in the humanity that have been caused by the attack by the bug and his minions here. And the society has shifted and changed already. As I say, Big Pharma is going down. No one's going to trust them again. No one's trusting hospitals. That has a ripple effect on insurance. I won't go to a hospital now, so why the fuck should I pay my Medicare bill, right? I would literally rather die on the street or find myself in an urgent care situation or take my own stuff and suture myself than go into a hospital, because it is so fucking dangerous. And so the only place I would ever use Medicare is at the hospital. I don't take Medicare, don't take allopathic drugs, that sort of thing. So there's ripples of all of these different decisions. And so I'm taking a moral issue here. It has operational and strategic implications. Now I'm operating in the woo aspect of this. I can see things out, Social Security is going to collapse. It won't be functioning that much longer, blah, blah, blah. They'll still send out checks and all of these kind of things, but when will the checks cease to be meaningful? And when will people stop going to work? Are we just a few months from that? Is it going to collapse because of the number of people dying, because of the collapse of the fiat currencies globally, and so on and so on? So we're in this asymmetric evolutionary warfare. It's getting busy, okay? It's getting busier, and it's going to get a lot busier in a short period of time. We're seeing real deaths from it. We're also seeing the precursor to those deaths and other changes in the social order. So the weapon that the bug has used, the spike protein, the vax, the whole thing is causing recidivism in people. So in terms of drug and alcohol abuse. So I'm aware of individuals that are vaxxed that are now, going back to drinking, going back to doing drugs, and they might have been clean for a number of years. And they get the vax, and within a month or so, they're back. And I don't know why, they don't know why. So it's just another tick mark on here of something that's going on. Now, as part of the aspects of the warfare here, my suggestion to people in engaging in the warfare, those that want to, is that we start out here in the woo and then go into moral, and then just restrict ourselves into the moral aspects of it here to pump up the info wars, right? So don't let anybody have a moral position that excludes you. And so in my way of thinking, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I would never take a vaccine, but that doesn't make me an anti-vaxxer. I think the principle of the vaccine is fine. I just think humans fuck it up and don't do very well. But I'm a natural immunity guy, right? I'm a pro-genetic immunity, pro-natural being fellow. And so that's my moral stance, that natural immunity is amenable, you can alter it, mutable, you can pump it up, and it addresses all things in nature. And so fuck their vaccine, it's weak, it only does the one spike, not the other 16. My natural immunity will do all of the other 16, so fuck them. And then I also take the moral ground on the idea of people being fired here, right? And so I've got a friend of mine that's going to face this relatively quickly here in Washington State, and he's going to not take the vax. He's going to force them to fire him, force them to give him a letter of termination, because without that he has less solid grounds on a lawsuit. But he's going to insist that they provide him an opportunity to take a licensed, approved vax with a complete sheet of exclusions, informed consent. Okay, so this puts him in a real bind. So he's saying to them, no, I'm not quitting. No, I'm not rejecting the vaccine. But you must be legal in your offer, and you are not. You are not presenting me with an opportunity to take a licensed, approved vaccine with complete informed consent. So you're at the loss, and so you can do everything you want, and he's recorded them this way, so it doesn't matter at this point if they give him a letter of termination or not. They're fucked, because they're not able to provide him informed consent. Therefore, that's against all of the, all human rights laws, all of this kind of stuff. And so that's his approach on this, and so far it's got him kind of over a barrel. He recorded his supervisor, and he recorded his supervisor's supervisor in the situation. They don't want to fire him, okay? So there's another aspect of this. There's this moral thing he's getting on. His supervisor's supervisor expressed to him that he didn't want to be here, but he's in a real bind himself, right? And my friend's supervisor, we don't think has taken the vax. And so it puts him in even shakier moral grounds, right? So basically, you're just fighting and pushing back on them, and just keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. You're not offering me an opportunity to take a legal, approved vaccine. Just because you were an asshole and took a unapproved vaccine doesn't mean I have to. Give me an opportunity. Give me a legal, lawful opportunity to refuse. You don't have to say to refuse. That's what you're going to do, because you're not going to take that shit no matter what. But make them go through all of those efforts, because they can't. They fail. They can't provide a authorized vaccine. They can't provide a informed consent packet to where you can read all of the potential side effects. And since they can't do those, this is an illegal thing that they're attempting to do. They may still fire you. They may still kick you off the grounds, take all of the badges and so forth, record them if you can, and you've got opportunities for a great lawsuit. And we're getting into this aspect here where real soon now is actually the moral aspect is coming out, because at some point the judiciary will have to cave and follow the morality, because they won't want to be lynched. This is the practicality that we're into now. The bug and his minions did not expect anybody other than Alex Jones to ever do anything to him, right? They didn't expect that the awakening would take the route and the time that it did, nor that it would reach the point that it has. And so this has thrown them for a loop, because they are not prepared. The bug doesn't understand. These people over here do not understand fourth generation warfare. They barely understand 3-generation warfare, right? Because they've never had the idea of morality in here. The CCP is not moral. They're barely mental. All they understand is tactical and strategic and operational propaganda. And that's only a small aspect of the mental wars. And so their vision is so limited that they will fail. They are the ones that are basically driving all of this. I think that the bug is doing this to them and has set up this structure. If we think about this, the bug does not like asymmetry at the macro level, at the level that the bug lives at, because all bugs are alike. This is the differentiation point between fourth generation beings and fifth generation beings. Okay, a fifth generation being would be like us, a fifth level being, where we're individuated. A fourth level being would be individuation without outward appearance of that. So basically, at a large, and this is not a hard line, it's a gradation, right? It's a continuum. But basically, all reptiles look like any other reptile in their species with some small differences. But the more you approach the ability to do thinking and so on, you get into where we have individuation in how we express our bodies. And so you find that while all gorillas look alike, even to humans, they will have differentiation that you can tell one gorilla face from another relatively easily, or one gorilla body or movement or whatever, right? Not true of iguanas, not true of lizards. You'd have to be a practiced lizard looker to be able to tell one lizard from another. And if you get into insects, forget it, that does not exist. Once you get back below the baseline for vagus nervous system, now insects have nerves, not as we understand them. They don't have the fine line construction of the protein filaments that we have. They have nervous conduction systems, right? So they are unlike us in many key ways, but they are also replicants of each other to such a huge degree within each and every body that it's impossible for our bug, the space alien bug, to conceive of life as we express it, individuated, as being healthy. It thinks of us as a disease because all life should be this regimented structure that basically is how the bug exists, how it lives. So it is at war with us because of asymmetry, because of that deep asymmetry, because of the bug's understanding of life versus our understanding. And I can get into tons of stuff about that level, the philosophical aspects of how the bug is approaching this and why its mind works the way it does, but it's not pertinent at this point. So we have the impacts of the war showing up now. We're going to get into bigger death rates. We're going to get all of the impacts of war on our infrastructure, other than probably the blowing up of buildings and stuff. As I say, we likely will have to do that after this war is over, just because there won't be enough people to occupy these things and they will become hazards. We'll probably have to destroy a lot of buildings and abandoned places just because they're going to become hazards. We may just let them go. There may be that much of a shrinkage of the population, but I don't think so. We're going to have a big loss, but I don't think it'll be as big as the bug wants. So be asymmetric. Find your moral high ground out in the woo and work inward. Woo is powerful, right? When the woo is with you, you're way powerful, as we see. I'm still here, still pushing this woo shit out, and they've been fucking with me for a long time. Unfortunately, there's side effects to this. It really does impact. So I was trying to get some money to Vinnie Eastwood, and he's in New Zealand. And I find that I can't mail things to New Zealand because the New Zealand government is pissed at me and it's returned at port of entry. Sent back. I can't do a wire transfer. Again, same reason. The SWIFT system is just barricaded at New Zealand. And we can't send physical metal because no one will insure the delivery to New Zealand. And it just goes on and on and on. So I'm at a loss. They won't let Vinnie Eastwood. I can send him cryptos real easy, right? He's under house arrest, but they won't let him have an internet-capable device. So we're still working on it. Still looking at it. There's got to be a way around the bug and his minions down there to get this poor guy some cash so that he doesn't have to suffer. They've got him under house arrest. He can't go out. The whole country's under lockdown, and they're really coming down hard on Vinny for saying they're a bunch of fucktards, or whatever it was, his particular words about it. I'll let you go, guys. It's the rainy part of the war. We're getting into the winter. All wars go through winters, and basically all wars are going to go through harsh winters and spoil a couple of springs. We've already been through 1 year of this. We're into the second year of it. I don't know how long it'll persist, but we're going to see major changes now. So it's like all the other wars, right? The first couple of years, you're moving your people back and forth, getting everything set up, and then shit happens violently, suddenly, but briefly, relatively. And unlike the Bugs Wars, like it was, you know, the deep states wars against Afghanistan and all these other things in Iraq that just go on and on and on and on with no resolution, because the point is not to resolve it. The point is to keep the machinery going. We're out of that stage. So the good news is that warfare as we knew it, evolutionary warfare, has arrived. And warfare as we knew it has died. And the warfare that we knew was the deep state warfare. We're now getting back to this fourth generation warfare, which is like warfare used to be, right? Where you wouldn't necessarily fight for a state. You'd fight for your clan, you'd fight for your family, you fight for your tribe. You know, that's where we're at now. Some people are fighting for ideologies. They're the Bugs tools, because there's no moral high ground in an ideology. Communism has no moral high ground. It's not a moral operation at all. And so it's brittle. It doesn't have any sustaining power, as we will see. Anyway, be careful, you know, remember the grid here. Plot your actions against this grid. What are you attempting to accomplish tactically, operationally, and strategically with whatever moral stance you're taking? If you don't have a moral stance, if you're operating back down here, don't do it, okay? It'll end up fucking you out up there. So, you know, so it's like the doctors not standing up are doing their job, killing people in the hospitals, and they have no moral high ground at all. And when this is all over, a lot of them are going to hang. A lot of people are going to be really, really, really pissed, and retribution is going to come for those individuals that implemented the protocol that Fauci and these other fuckers pushed out on everybody that caused all of these deaths. And so there will be retribution and so on, and it will come from a moral position, because those people did not have any moral position. So like I say, you know, get your grid effectively tuned before you take any actions. It's going to be necessary that there's going to be street actions. I don't think it's pertinent at this point. When it does, you'll be very, very, very clear about all of the aspects here, right? And so if you're unclear about all these, so like September 18th, what is your moral strategic goal? You know, what is your moral operational goal? How are you going to reinforce your particular claim to morality on this by what you're doing out in the street? And then tactically, what the fuck are you doing there, putting yourself at risk to a false flag, right? So you got to analyze this stuff, because these guys here are in control of the bug, and it's a mean, nasty, evil little bug. Yeah, it's a mean, nasty, evil little bug, guys. I got to go and enjoy the rain here and get some stuff done. We'll do more of these. I've got a interview tomorrow with a couple of cool guys. Other people are getting strikes and stuff on their channels, so it's going to get a little crazy as we go forward here.